Do you actually have a therapist hat?
You hired me, didn't you?
I don't know why.
I still work for you.
That's true.
You better believe I've got a therapist hat. It's not that much different, but...
Is it the one that says thinking cap? And then on the other side, it says just kidding?
Not thinking. It says not thinking.
Right.
Oh, where is that hat?
Ooh, do you remember the thing I used to have? I don't have it anymore. Yeah. All right.
What a cold open for a not so cold topic.
Would you rather I say our open's on fire?
We're heating up.
Uh-huh. All right.
Oh, no.
Let's do this.
Are we doing a content warning? I'm pretty sure it'll be fairly obvious.
The whole thing today is a content warning.
Yeah, we're talking about fires, y'all.
Right. Yep.
Not just fires in general. The fires that you have probably heard of sweeping California, Southern California, including, but not limited to, Doug's house. What? Did you want to say it?
You know what I do want to say?
What? Oh, sorry. It's been a while. It's been a while.
I am Doug Friedman.
Oh, right. I am Kenzie Janest.
And this is Your Mental Breakdown,
The podcast. With incredible acoustics. Like, what? Sounds like we're in an empty house.
Yeah.
We kind of are.
Or a giant like cathedral or something
Yeah.
like that, right?
Can you hear the stained glass windows, everyone?
But that's right. We're not coming to you from my house.
We are not. Because
My house is gone.
Doug's house is gone, you guys.
Yep. And we are going to talk about stuff that...
We're just going to talk about it.
Right.
We're still in shock. I'm still in shock. You must be in shock.
Yeah, I'd say a healthy dose of shock, denial, and avoidance.
Totally.
And compartmentalize the rest. And I will say that one thing that we're figuring out for the podcast is what we're going to do going forward, because a lot of our audio files were on SD cards in the house, all the gear gone.
Yeah, this is all brand new gear.
Yep.
And it smells horrible. I hate it so much. I hate brand new smell.
Yeah, you're just saying the brand new car smell.
It's the absolute worst to me. It's like gasoline.
You know what smell I'm looking forward to is brand new house smell. I would really like to have a brand new house.
So, Doug, what's your favorite defense mechanism?
Clearly.
Everyone take a guess.
Clearly, it is humor.
Humor. Good old humor.
Yeah.
It's been very helpful.
Yeah. I do actually spend a lot of time being very, very serious and doing that for others. And, you know, for me, I mean, that's why we have therapists too.
Yeah. You've been in therapy still?
Sure.
Okay. How's that going?
It's going great.
Yeah. No, actually, Doug. Well, okay. I have a lot of questions for you, but obviously there's no right, wrong, good, bad way to start this. Well, there probably are some bad ways that I could have started this.
Sure.
But doing a podcast like this, it's not even right after. I mean, it is right after, but it also feels like we're still in the midst of it. Like this is still, I think for a lot of people, a shock.
I mean, the fires that broke out near your parents' house.
Yes.
Right?
That was literally 2 days ago or yesterday still. It's still not 100% contained. Like,
right.
It just feels like it's never ending, really.
Just for context for you guys, we're about 2 weeks out of the fires
important.
that we had.
Do you want to give any more details just about the fire? You think people probably know the gist of it?
For you guys that don't know, sure, we can give a little context. And I could give
just a
context specific to me if they want it.
Yeah.
What we decided was that we're going to walk through trauma, loss, grief in real time through me. And we'll see how it goes with me and Kenzie doing this. And we will probably invite other people onto the podcast that work with trauma or that are experiencing a similar kind of loss and give you guys just a flavor for what's going on right in the thick of it.
And now you can finally give everyone your address.
Well, it doesn't exist anymore, right?
Exactly.
Yep.
Well, the obvious question is, what now? Right? Like, I think that's more of the logistics.
Sure.
But I'm talking emotionally. What now? What have you been doing? How have you been coping? Obviously, we know humor is a very important defense mechanism, but actually.
Yeah. And that goes back to when we first started the podcast. Meredith and I were both dealing with a loss. Me, the loss of my wife, her, the loss of her mom.
Oh,
We
wow.
both passed within like a week or two of each other.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So for us,
Yeah.
it was, we need to keep working. We need to keep doing stuff. We need to keep active. It really helped us to focus on other things. So in a sense, when you go, what now? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you being a good therapist said, what now emotionally, right? Not just what now.
Yeah. Well, because that's just what everyone's saying, right? Like, oh my God, what now? Everyone's in shock. And what do they do, right? How do we rebuild? Like, oh my God. And I'm like, yeah, but emotionally, like, what
Right.
now? What are we doing?
Honestly, I'll say, what now emotionally? Oh, I compartmentalize.
Yeah, you just, life goes on. Like, you have to find a way forward.
Right. And that for me, compartmentalizing means I know that the emotion's there and I'm putting it away. And then I have my therapy and I open it up where I talk to some friends or my family. My sister and her boyfriend lost their house also. You know, you let it out in certain times and you let it out with certain people and you process it as best you can as it comes up. I think the biggest thing is to recognize that it's coming up, even if you're not going to deal with it. That's what compartmentalizing means to me, is you take it, put it over there, and then you're going to open it up later, as opposed to just completely repressing it, suppressing it, drowning it in whatever you drown things in. Right?
Right. Well, I think that's the difference between healthy compartmentalizing and like pure avoidance or distraction, you know, we can call it. But there's practical and healthy distraction too. It's a very valuable coping skill.
For sure.
Just like compartmentalizing, the way you're talking about it is exactly how I talk about it with clients and myself. Like, yeah, you know you're feeling a feeling, but you also don't have the bandwidth or the time or the energy to actually feel it all the time. You have shit to do.
There are some people I've talked to that I see both ends of the spectrum. One where you are incredibly active and proactive and doing whatever you can. For me, it's how am I moving forward? I have some friends from the neighborhood that were volunteering a ton and trying to get back up to the neighborhood as much as they can and helping out, passing out water and clothes and cool, but what about you? And you're like, oh yeah. You know, and then it hits them, right? So they stay active that way. Right. Then there are some that are just paralyzed, like are feeling the feelings entirely right now.
Right. Fight, flight, freeze.
Right.
They're in full freeze, shutdown mode.
Totally.
And none of it, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Doug, none of it is better or worse or right or wrong. It's just everyone's different.
Yeah. It's all part of the process. To me, I wouldn't say it's better or wrong in a sense to process these feelings as they're coming up or recognizing them and pinning them to process later. And that if you don't process it, oh, that's wrong. Like, I mean, as a therapist, we could say, well, it's probably going to come up later.
Yeah. And you make a good point, because I was going to ask you this. As a therapist, you said, right? As a therapist, you can, obviously it's not the same, but you can kind of therapize yourself in a sense, right? And be like, okay, this is what I would tell a client. I can understand what's probably helpful or effective for me in this case. What would you tell someone who is not a therapist or is just going through a crisis or a trauma, who like maybe doesn't have access to therapy or doesn't know what coping skills even are?
What I would say to somebody who is a therapist and trying to therapize themselves also is that you can't do it yourself and you can't do it alone.
It's not the same.
No, it is absolutely not the same. I can't therapize myself.
No.
I can recognize things and understand things as they're happening, or like, oh, that's coming up. Okay, I got to deal with that later. But I can't do my own therapy on myself.
It's just not possible.
You're too
That's what
subjective.
therapy is.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly. And someone who doesn't have access to this and is going through it, recognize the feelings as they're coming up. You don't have to go through and feel them and process them as they come up.
Right.
But you do need to mark them somehow, whether you journal it, whether you write a note, or whatever you want to do, and just say, oh man, this was coming up. I got to talk to somebody about this. Okay. Don't just suppress it. That's where I think we can get into trouble down the line. Something at some point in your everyday life is going to trigger something, and your response is going to be disproportionate. And you're going to go, whoa, where did that come from?
Right.
Well, it came from not dealing with this.
Yeah. And that goes for so many things, but obviously right now in the context of if you've lost everything. But back to you specifically, I mean, if we zoom in here, you said, and I think you posted about this, it's in your GoFundMe page, right? Like you've said, I've experienced total loss before and I will be okay.
Yeah.
Can you just explain that a little bit more? Because I think I know what you're talking about, but how does that feel similar? How does it feel different?
Sure. Those that know my story know that in 2018, in the span of a week, I lost my wife to suicide and I got diagnosed with MS. And it was just devastating. My world turned upside down for myriad of reasons.
Right.
And I was lost for a while. I didn't know my story. I didn't know myself. I didn't know my new life. I didn't know anything. And I was seeing 2 therapists at the time and working on it and trying to get through it.
Wow.
And I was being a therapist. I was working with clients when the focus wasn't on me. And I had to eventually sell my house, went away to the mountains and just went, let me take a breath. Let me process what happened. Let me feel the gravity of it. And when I was there, I had my stuff in storage, just me and Beckett and a guitar and a few things that fit in my car. And that was it.
Wow.
So I pretty much had nothing. And I felt like my life had ended.
Yeah.
And I had to start again. I had to find some way to find a life that I felt was worth living again. Right.
Yeah.
And some of that through work, sure. But I need to find my story and what is it? What is it going forward? And I did that. I went back to the neighborhood I loved. I bought a new house there, which was great. And finally like, okay, get my stuff out of storage and cool. We're starting new and this is great. And all right, I get to paint my own story now. Okay. And still with the grief. It wasn't like, it was all, sunshine and rainbows. No. It was move forward, not move on. And that experience also kind of keyed into me like, well, what's important? What really means things. And it's community, friends, family, and being of service and having a purpose to others in a greater sense for me.
Yeah.
I'm not saying for everybody.
I mean, I feel that.
So having gone through that, losing literally everything I own.
Yeah. Like material, like actual things, everything you own. Whereas that was everyone, not that you owned, but that you felt so emotionally attached to.
Right.
And now it's just everything, like every object.
Right. And it kind of keys into the impermanence of life, of things.
And the powerlessness, I imagine, like absolute lack of control.
Right. And just going, okay, well, what can I control and what can't I control? And what can I focus on and what feels important at the time? Yeah. And that to me is a key because I have clients that say, oh man, what you went through, like, I feel like such an idiot. Like it's meaningless if I'm telling you about my relationship or like this thing someone said at work is bothering me. Like, no, but that is the most important thing right now.
Yeah. Are you saying like you sitting across from them and listening to them, like their problem, that is the most important thing right now for you too, as you listen to it?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Exactly. Yeah. That's partly why going back to work and being a therapist feels good. Yeah. Because I can make it about someone else and have that importance.
Right. And talk about compartmentalizing, right? Like you get to just kind of focus on something else for a minute.
Totally.
Yeah. For 50 minutes.
Yeah.
If we're going back in time, right? Like in 2018, was that when you went to Colorado?
No, 2018 is when my wife passed and I got the diagnosis. It took me almost 2 years before I sold my house and moved.
That's what I was wondering. I was wondering kind of what your timeline like process looked like for you to say, I need some time off. Like I need to just kind of recenter.
It's funny. It wasn't time off because I continued to work the entire time.
Oh, okay.
It was maybe not too long after she passed in 2019 that I talked to a friend of mine who's my real estate agent and, looked at what my options are. And she was like, do you want to stay in the house? And I said, yes, of course I do. Because this is where my wife was and this is where we are. And this, I was very tied to that.
Sure. Yeah.
Then as time moved on, I realized everywhere I turned was the ghost of her and the ghost of the promise of our future and what we were supposed to have and supposed to build. And my dog passed away in that house, not Beckett. He's still with us. That was Franklin. And I realized in order to have my own story and move on, I needed to not be in that house. And then I called her and said, okay, I need to get out of here. I need to not be here anymore. Okay. And that was 2 years after she passed. So it took 2 years.
Yeah. Grief
And
is
even
not
then,
quick.
no, it's not quick. And all I knew at the time was I needed to get away from there. So for me, I think you've heard me say it's more empowering to run to something than to run away from something. But at that point, I was running away. I knew I needed to leave this behind and figure out what the next is.
And you could easily reframe that and say, I was running to my new chapter, like my new life.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Yeah,
not
yeah, yeah.
from anything in particular. It's just really like moving
True.
forward. Like you had no choice really, but to either wallow in it and stay
Right.
in that, right? Or
Yeah.
create a new life for yourself.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And I did know that I needed to move forward. I didn't know what that was. I just knew it was forward. So, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let me go over there and let me start again. So to answer your original question for that, like starting over, that's what starting over was. Like, what's my story now?
How does that feel similar / different to this level of grief or this type of grief and starting over?
It's interesting because this one is sort of like, okay, so everything's gone. All right, what's next? Like
that sounds so like unemotional or very stoic.
Yeah. Okay. And that's without tapping into the emotion that I've compartmentalized, right?
Of course. Yeah.
Once I get to my next place, whether that's a year from now or whatever, when we get through the rebuilding and I'm back in Altadena in 3 or 4 years, who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe that's when it'll all hit me. I don't know.
Yeah. There are a lot of unknowns right now.
Right.
I imagine too, and I've been thinking about this, the grief, we're comparing and contrasting like grief of losing a human versus losing a house. And I think a lot of people right now are like, either it's the survivor's guilt of like, I didn't lose anything. I shouldn't be so upset with my trivial issues right now. But then the people who actually did lose their homes and everything that they own are feeling guilty that they're upset about material items being lost. And I'm just so curious what you think about that, because it's so much more than just material items, right? Unless you're like a Zen monk or something, right? Or a complete actual stoic who's just not attached to anything.
I don't buy that.
I was going to say,
all.
I don't buy it. I call bullshit.
You might have heard me talk about this book a long time ago, The Sacred and the Profane by Eliade. It's about how we construct the world around us. Yeah. I remember studying like home altars and things like that and how we arrange certain objects in our place, and the things that we hold sacred, we keep around us. Yeah. It can be anything from religious iconography to I went and bought a Dodgers hat and a Red Sox hat, that are hanging, like brand new ones, right? Nice. Right behind you. See? So seeing those.
Wow. Yeah. What does that do for you?
It gives me a sense of familiarity. Those are my baseball teams that I loved as a kid. The Boston that's where my dad's from. So it made me think of that. And, there's something that we do to construct our comfort around us, our sacred world that means something. So all of these objects and material things that we have can be a link to that. To what makes us feel comfortable and otherworldly in a sense, or this worldly, right? Yeah. So I think there's something about, losing all my material possessions. It's not just that. It's, one of the things that my mom pointed out was, that painting that grandma did. It was my dad's mom, did this beautiful oil painting of a musician sitting at a drum set playing like a clarinet. Yeah. And then in the background behind him is hanging a picture of the same musician at the drum set playing a clarinet.
This was at your house?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if I recall this.
It was really cool. It was where all the guitars were.
Okay. I figured like by the piano.
Yeah. Okay. And she said like, wow, it's too bad that that's gone. I know that meant so much to you. And I thought about it. It was like, that had, the Friedman name on it because my grandma did it. And it was one of the only things that linked me to her in terms of music, something that I could kind of share with her that was part of my life. And it was also like my dad's name and part of holding on to something from him because he passed away a few years ago. Right. So that is gone. Yeah. And maybe I can commission someone to replicate it and do a new version of it, but it's not the same thing. No. So there's something sentimental that's gone. That's the word. Also. Yeah.
It's the sentiment that we put on objects, not the object themselves, obviously. It's the meaning that we put on them. Yeah. I mean, there's a reason why all these volunteer events, like we were collecting comfort items. Like there's a reason for that. And they weren't just for kids comfort items, right? Like not just stuffed animals and stuff. It's like art supplies, like literally anything that, people need more than just the basics.
Stuffed animals too. I had my little stuffed potbelly bear that I had when I was a kid.
You still had that at your house?
I still had that.
Wow.
And all the stuff that Kim had from her lifetime was in boxes that I still hadn't gone through.
Wow.
In a room in the house.
Oh my gosh.
And I would think about, wow, her like shoebox of memories with like love letters from, her junior high boyfriend.
Crush,
right, exactly. And, and that's all gone. Wait a second. My shoebox of memories is gone.
That reminded me, because I was going to ask too, like because of Kim being gone, right? And now the house being gone. And granted, this is not the house that she passed in, but it was the house that you rebuilt your life in.
Right.
You had these sentimental objects and things that reminded you of her. I imagine, I'm just curious, did it feel almost like a double loss in a way,
No, I'll tell you that there are a couple things that people said to me. Yeah. So my sister was holding on to Kim's ashes. I didn't want it on me, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And after the fires, I thought, well, that's kind of symbolic. Like my house and my sister's house both burned down. Wow. So now the ashes of our places are mixed with Kim's ashes. Yeah. That's kind of poetic.
I was just about to say that. Yeah.
And I talked to my sister and she said, yeah, we evacuated at 3 a.m. and got the dogs and we got this. Oh, and I got Kim's ashes.
Oh my God. Juliana would though, you know, like, of course you would.
Of course. And something, another friend of mine said was, I know you still hadn't gone through everything of hers. And maybe it's, I don't want to say a good thing, but kind of a blessing that now all of that is just gone. And you don't have that, I don't want to call it a burden, but you don't have that attachment,
like
that unresolved baggage.
Yeah, sure.
Right. Okay. And similarly, we put my mom into an assisted living home about a year ago. Yeah. And a lot of her stuff was at my house.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too.
Right. And that's all gone too. That one feels more like a liberation. Like, she doesn't have to hold on to these things and she could let it go. And maybe that's what my friend was saying. Like, maybe now you can let this go. And just hold on to the memories, which ironically is the name of the song that I wrote about leaving the house.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The previous house with Kim, not this current. I was like, you already wrote a song about this? Jeez, Doug, you've been at work. No. I mean, I wouldn't be that surprised. I'm sure we're gonna get a whole album, folks, and I can't wait. Okay, that reminded me because your friends, I'm sure everyone is saying different things. I don't want to call them platitudes, right? People are trying to console you, I'm sure, in any ways that they know how. I mean, me included, right? And I often just go to defense mechanism humor with you, right? Because that's one of my faves too.
Right.
And it's easy for us, I think.
Yeah.
Are there things that are more or less helpful from people right now?
Yeah, I would say like a lot of what you've been doing.
I was literally, I knew it. I walked myself into that one.
No, I appreciate that question. And I appreciate like all of my friends, all three of them have really stepped up. No.
So you didn't lose everything.
No. Still have my humor.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people reached out and gave if there's anything I could do, what do you need? Oh my God, I'm so hard. Wow, I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. And it was and still is overwhelming.
Okay.
And I remember from having gone through this in 2018 when Kim passed and all the people that were reaching out, I just couldn't.
Yeah.
And I just went, nope, fine, go away, leave me alone.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't respond. This time around, I've said to some of my friends, hey, if you can check on me in like a couple of weeks or maybe a month or so, that would be great.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm just overwhelmed and exhausted, and I just need to keep going.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's really honest.
Yeah. And that's, I remember one of my friends, my colleague, John Sovek, who I've had on the podcast before when we did a roundtable. He's somebody that after Kim passed said, I'm going to check in on you every couple of weeks. I'm just going to call and check in, nice. And if you want to go for a walk, you want to talk, cool. If you don't, that's all right. But I'm just going to keep checking in.
Okay.
And that was really helpful.
Okay.
Because I knew that was somebody that was always there. And that's a lesson that I've taken to say what I've said to friends. Because I honestly, my essentials are met right now. I still need a place, but I'm okay.
Yeah.
And I don't want to turn people away. I want to use this as an opportunity to keep them in and invite them in.
Yeah. I mean, as we know, obviously, right after trauma, the thing not to do is to isolate yourself, right? But at the same time, you have to have that, I'm putting balance in quotes here, but that balance of having your me time, your processing, your self-reflection, your introspective time, or literally just decompression, while also making sure you stay connected to your people.
I'll double down on the staying connected to your people. So a couple of my friends, you know them, Chris and Hillary, right?
Yeah.
They're in the neighborhood and we met up yesterday and our dogs got to see each other. We got to see each other. We not only have gone through the same thing, they lost their house, right? But we were linked and connected in the old neighborhood and now we're here and it felt really nice to see somebody that is still going through it and is part of what we went through. So finding like support groups or people in community, no matter what your loss was, you don't have to have lost your home in your neighborhood, but any sort of loss that you go through, why a lot of therapists anyway talk about finding a support group is because people that are going through the same thing are going to share something with you that no one else understands.
And as we know, validation and just the social aspect of healing is so important.
I will also say that a lot of people are reaching out to me through social media, through text, through phone calls, through emails.
Yeah.
And again, I want to be very appreciative of all of that.
Yeah.
And
I knew that was coming.
Right? And it is so overwhelming and people are trying to be helpful by saying, oh, here's this resource. Oh, hey, did you see this link? Oh, hey, there's this.
Okay.
It's something I hate doing is not responding to people.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And when I have, 40 something texts that are all people checking in or sending like various resources, all of which I've seen.
Yeah.
And I appreciate, but then it puts almost this obligation on me to respond.
Or at least you think of it that way, right? Because I'm sure they would not judge you for not responding, but it's just the way it goes. It's a back and forth. Yeah.
Right. And there's a little community of us that would go to the dog park together that we're on a thread. And we started like, oh, let's create this Google Doc for resources so everybody can just put it over there instead of inundating ourselves with all of this.
Yeah.
Because it's also very hard to sort through all the information to find out what's legit and what isn't.
Yeah,
and
that's
it's
so true.
Everything from what to do with your insurance claim, at least for losing a home, like we did, the insurance claim, like, oh, well, do I need a lawyer? And are people going to sue Edison for this? And do we get on that? Or do I get a lawyer to navigate the insurance stuff? And do I get a public adjuster? Do I get FEMA? Do what do I, there's so much information and not all of it is coming through accurately. And then you're getting like reels or clips on social media of people that are saying, here's what you need to know. Or, I went through this and here's this. And it's
too much.
Oh man.
Yeah. It's too much. Okay. How do I word this? Because my question is literally, do you think you're still in shock right now? But I know that is such a simplified question. Why are you looking at me like that?
What?
That was okay, yeah. So you took that as actual shell shock, like dissociating. Okay.
That was my glazed over.
Oh, I saw it. Yeah. I don't know how we're defining shock, to be fair, but that fight, flight, freeze feeling of just not fully being able to process what has happened. Like, do you feel like you're still kind of like, where do you feel like you're at right now, a few weeks out?
That's a very good question. It is. No, I'm being legit. God, it's so hard for you to tell when I'm being serious.
Sorry. Yeah. The dynamic is just that. Yep.
So for me, one of the things that happened, which is great, is some of us that lost our homes got a credit on Airbnb, but we had to use it by a certain date. Right.
Okay.
So I used it to book a couple days in Santa Barbara.
Oh, that's what that was.
Right.
Nice.
That's what that was. So I took Beckett and just went out there. And ironically, we wound up staying at a place like 2 blocks from a dog beach, which is amazing. And I got there, unloaded the stuff, grabbed him, walked over to the beach. And literally walking down the stairs to get to the beach.
Yeah.
I meet somebody who also lost their home, and she goes,
Right.
"Oh, Altadena, do you know her?"
Oh,
And we look down the stairs, and I hear this, "Dog? Oh my God!" And it's this woman and her dog that knew me and Beckett, and I've known her, for many years, and it was nice to kind of commiserate for a minute.
Okay.
And that was cool. That was one of the first people that I had seen that had gone through it.
Yeah.
And that was within minutes of getting to this place.
Yeah.
Within hours of being at this place, I got a cough, I got sick,
Oh my God.
and I got laid up. Right?
Yeah.
So I could do pretty much nothing but order food and take Beckett the 2 blocks to the beach and then pass out on the couch.
Yep.
And cough. And that to me was, I call it the Scooby-Doo effect. When you see Scooby and Shaggy take off out of their skin and then it catches up to them later.
Yeah.
This was it catching up to me.
Right.
This was my system going, hey, look, you're not in shock right now.
Yeah.
So all this heightened adrenalized action that you're in, we're going to shut it down and kick your ass.
Yeah. You have to lay down.
Right.
You have to rest.
Right.
And feel it.
Right. I laid down and I started to feel it.
Yeah. I was going to say, what was that like?
I'll tell you.
You don't have to share any details if you don't want to, but I am curious, just your emotional process through that.
So mostly it was just exhaustion.
Yeah.
I was just feeling exhaustion and maybe some isolation and loneliness, creeping in. And as that was creeping in, I wound up picking up the phone for one call, and it happened to be my insurance adjuster for the first time. And talking to him, I could go right back into that adrenalized state.
Wow.
And I went, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I felt like crap. I was probably running a little fever and coughing up.
Oh, yeah.
And then, oh, wow, look at that. I'm functioning. Oh, right. Because that's the cortisol injection. Right?
Well, it's your body functioning the way it was meant to function. It's trying to survive and trying to get you through this, right? It instantly was oh, right, yeah, now we're on and we're doing logistical stuff. Okay, we're back.
Right.
What was it like when you hung up the phone?
It was a mix of, ooh, I can do that. That felt, I don't want to say good, but it did, easy. And I went, man, I can see why some people stay active. I can see why I need to not. I can also see why some people go to drugs and alcohol.
Totally.
Right.
Yep. Just to stay up, or numb.
Right.
Yeah.
And for me, it was, I don't want to do any of that. So let me just crash.
Yeah.
And there were a couple people that I could talk to. Good. And that was nice.
Yeah.
And there were some people I'm like, no, definitely don't want to talk to this person because I know what they're going to want to talk to me about. I know what they're going to bring up.
Yeah.
And I can't go there right now. Good. So I got to pick and choose.
Yeah. Boundaries.
Yeah, absolutely.
Truly.
Absolutely.
When they're needed
boundaries.
most. Good.
Yep. And it just gave me a little bit of a reset that I don't have to stay in constant motion.
Yeah. Talk about that, the existential, just human limitations, right? We can't do it all. You lose your home in a fire and you can't just keep on going as normal. You can to the extent possible, and the extent possible is not fully going on as usual.
Right.
You do need to take a step back or a pause.
Yeah.
Your body will force you to.
And it did.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because it also, I got to take that pause for a couple of days in Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Ironically, being able to breathe the fresh air is what gave me the cough.
I know. What the heck? That's backwards.
Right.
Yeah.
But not everybody has the luxury of pausing. And I have a dog. I don't have kids.
Right.
And there are some people that have to keep going.
Right.
And I get that, and they don't get a chance to stop.
Yeah.
And for me, there's a lot of people depending on me for what I do, professionally and personally. And I didn't want to stop, but I wanted to be able to at least recognize the value of pausing and the toll that it's taking on me.
Has anything surprised you? Because as a seasoned therapist, a seasoned Zen master, as I call you, that's a joke, but only a half joke.
Right.
You are, let's just say, more emotionally stable, regulated, however you want to say it, than most people, I would say. Is that fair to say?
Okay.
You've got a lot of coping skills in your toolbox.
Okay.
Do you disagree?
No, I think you're right. I have a lot of coping skills in my toolbox. I just lost my toolbox in the fire.
Dump.
Thanks for bringing that up again.
Shit, I'm so sorry.
No,
you were rebuilding the toolbox.
With what tools?
What's the Ouroboros, like the snake eating itself? What is that called?
Oh.
Is that what it's called?
Sure.
It's this weird chicken or the egg situation is what I'm talking about here, where you don't got the tools,
right?
But you also need the tools. So you are building the tools from no tools.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway. Well, you've completely derailed me. What's new? Nothing has actually changed that much, even though so much has changed. Has anything surprised you in this process so far?
Yeah. No, it has. Okay. And you will maybe not be surprised to hear that what surprised me was my emotional state. Okay. And I think a few days afterwards, I went to lunch in Pasadena with my friend. Yeah. And we were going to the Indian food place that I love so much.
I remember this.
And we got there and she was parking her car and I walked over to meet her and there was a place that was gathering donations for clothing. Yeah. And I was just kind of looking like, oh, that's nice. And then I didn't realize they were doing that here. And the guy said something like, oh, are you dropping off? And, my friend walked up and she said, oh no, he's someone who needs. And the guy just looked at me and went, oh my God, you lost your, oh, what do you need? What size are you? I think we got some, and he really wanted to help me, give me stuff.
Yes.
And I kind of went, no, don't worry about it. You just keep doing what you're doing. And he's like, no, you're why we're doing it. Let us give you some stuff. What do you need? Yeah. And, my friend said, he needs everything. Like I literally didn't have anything yet. I hadn't taken any donations. I hadn't done anything yet. And I noticed I started to well up. And I'm like, oh man, I think the only thing I can muster to say is, we just got to eat some food. I'm so hungry. Let me just eat and then I'll come back. Okay. And he's like, okay, well, we'll get started on something for you. Yeah. And I just walked away and her friend was like, you all right? And I was like, if I stood there one more second, I was going to lose it. Right. So that surprised me. It didn't surprise me that I have emotion. It surprised me that the emotion would just start to come out.
Like out of your control a bit. Yeah. Seemingly out of your control, which like I said, you're typically, not that you're this like buttoned up person, but you have emotion regulation skills, right? Like you're a therapist, you've been doing this a while. Yeah. Like you've kind of got it on lock for the most part, right? Yeah. And then something like this happens and it all goes haywire. Like you don't know what your brain and body is about to do or what it's capable of. You don't have as much control as you once did. And we go to our comforts for that and our defenses for that. Like great example is I was talking to an old friend of mine I haven't talked to in years and was asking him about like, hey, I know, I think your uncle's an architect or something, like if you can help out, and like, here's a guy, talk to this guy, he'll help you out, no problem. And then he cracked a joke and then I cracked a joke. And then, we just spent the next 15 minutes on a text thread of just like cracking each other up with horribly inappropriate jokes. That's my love language. Right. That was great. I could do that. Right. Yep. When I called this guy and talked to him and was like, and here's what's going on. Here's what I need. And he's giving me this great information. And I said, okay, well, thank you for this. And I'd love to keep talking to you, but I want to be very conscious of paying you for your time, or like, what do you want from this and what can I give you? And when he said, oh, you're a friend of Daniel's, like I got you. Yep. And I started to well up. Yeah. And I just went, oh, so somebody doing something for me. I'm used to being the one helping people out. So when people want to help me out, that triggers the emotion. And that's where I'm recognizing, you said, what surprises me? Like, oh, right, I don't have control over that. I don't want control over that. I want to be able to let that out. And I can recognize it when it's happening. I'm looking forward to being able to actually allow myself to let that out. You've been helping me out a lot. You don't realize it, or maybe you do, but you're just like, well, of course I would. Just doing my job.
Right. And that's something that, we joke about, right? If I take it in for real and don't joke and start to say how much I appreciate you, I will start dripping tears.
And then I'll start dripping tears. Yeah. But it's funny, right? Like then we laugh and it's like, well, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Is that effective? Is that helpful? Or should we be crying right now and praising each other? I don't know.
Yeah.
Context.
to me, as a therapist and as a human being, because I'm both, it's at least recognizing that that's there.
Yeah, we know it's there.
Right. If we were just joking and we didn't acknowledge this stuff,
right,
I don't think that's that healthy.
Right, because then tensions build or resentment and some weird, unknowns and assumptions. Yeah.
Right.
You've already taken an acknowledgement, let's say not accountability, but you've acknowledged your privilege in certain ways in this, right? And yet someone offering help and saying that you are someone who is in need right now. How do you reconcile those things, right?
Yeah, it's really tough because I am somebody who is not rich, but I am smart with money, and I can do things and I can set things up.
Yeah.
And I feel like, okay, I got this. I also am stretched incredibly thin and paying for my mom now and taking care of her and the business that I run and taking care of that. Like there's a lot that I take on.
Yeah.
And it's really, really hard. So allowing people to help me is great, and paying it forward as much as I can.
Yeah. So both.
Yeah.
You need both.
Yeah.
But you're acknowledging, it sounds like, more now than ever, ? That you actually do need to be taken care of a little bit.
Yes. Being taken care of is so hard for me.
I know it. Literally, as I said that, I was like, he doesn't want to admit that he needs to be taken care of.
No, well, so I think last night or even the night before, I called my friend Zoe and said, I need help. She said, okay, what? I said, I don't know how to eat right now. I'm so hungry. And I just tried, like I literally ordered food to be delivered and then did my next phone call.
Okay.
And the phone call ended and the food was supposed to be here.
Yeah.
And I got a notice that it was canceled. Maybe the restaurant
food was canceled.
Yeah. Thank you, DoorDash. Not their fault necessarily. Don't mean to call them out. You can still send me a gift card. Thank you,
not
DoorDash.
Sponsored.
No, not sponsored.
Definitely not sponsored.
By the way, Amazon, thank you very much for all of your,
But actually, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean,
talk about rebuilding your life. Amazon has come in clutch. Can't deny it.
I feel almost conflicted, but then again, I don't.
Know.
Like it's an easy way to get the essentials to me.
Context is important.
But
anyway.
So the
food got canceled.
And I was so hungry. Like I got to the point of this is where you get hangry.
Yep.
And I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like I've got some food that needs to be cooked in the fridge. I guess I can cook it, but I'm like,
you don't have
I just want to curl in the ball in the fetal position and I can't do it. And she was like, okay, well, this place, and she lives in this neighborhood. She's like, this place will deliver to you pretty quickly. Just put an order in right now. Like put an order in, go on there. And, I know the restaurant and well, okay, this and this. And and it says 38 minutes. It's going to be less than that. It's always less than that. They're super, super fast. Like, okay, but I'm not going to order this thing because that takes a long time. It's like, no, it actually doesn't. Like they'll get it to you in like 20 minutes.
Okay.
Like, okay. So I did that.
Okay.
Right away and talked to her for a little while longer. And then I got the alert like, oh, your food's been picked up by the driver. It will be to you in 15 minutes. Like, okay. All right.
Yeah.
So that was me really needing something in the moment that might seem silly to most people. Like I just didn't know how to feed myself that night. And I was so gassed and so, I mean, I was just beyond. I was out of spoons, as we say.
I was going to say, you're out of spoons and you couldn't troubleshoot something that is normally, in quotes, normally easy. Or like, if you've got proper executive functioning, you're like, okay, my food got canceled, time to order something else. But when you are so emotionally overwhelmed or taxed, right? Like just so,
And here's the thing is that she is somebody that's super close to me that I can call and go, hey, I need something right now.
Yeah.
And I think I actually said to her, okay, I need to preface this by saying I'm okay. And that scared the crap out of her.
She's my God, Doug. Yeah. If you said that to me, I'd freak out too.
I was like, I'm okay. I'm just super hungry and my food got canceled and I don't know how to feed myself. And she's like, okay, I got this, but it's
But to you, it felt like this is kind of a big deal.
Yeah. It was dire. Yeah. And my point is having people that you can count on and that you can have help you is huge, huge.
Yes.
You know?
I'm so glad that you let me break down boxes for you and return some Amazon shit.
Oh man, this place looked like,
A hoarder's house.
Right.
Which rightfully so. I was not judging you for that, but I was like, thank you for letting me help you.
Right.
And look, nothing is completely selfless or selfish, right? Like I get something out of that. You get something out of that. Like that's life. I enjoy helping you just like you enjoy helping most people.
To bring it maybe full circle.
Yeah.
That's partly why we're doing this. I don't know if it will help people. I would like to think it's helping me to talk about this.
Yeah.
And I hope it's helping others and we can connect. As we go through this, know a couple of things if you're listeners of the podcast.
Yeah.
We are trying to find if we still have any of those audio files and if we can salvage what we've done with those clients. I've talked to those clients because I still see them and we're kind of going, all right, well, here's the fire episode. Okay, let's start from here forward and see what happens.
Just a big gap.
Right. So we'll keep up with Drew and Sarah for sure. And as far as this goes, we'll see. Maybe this will be the kind of thing that we'll check in weekly and we can bring other people on here that are going through similar. It doesn't have to just be the fire loss. It can be any sort of loss, any sort of grief or processing of this. I think we all experience grief and loss.
Absolutely.
Right?
In different forms.
In different forms. And it's all relative to our own experience. It's like, my clients that would say, oh, no, I don't want to talk about my little problems. Like I lost my favorite belt. Like no big deal. No, it is a big deal.
Yeah.
That belt was great. You loved that belt.
Yeah.
Whatever it might be.
Yeah.
I don't want to diminish anybody else's loss. And I don't want to say like, well, I lost a whole house or, well, I lost a whole person.
It's not a competition.
Not at all. Not at all. And the feelings are universal and how we process them, I think is also universal. We might do it differently.
Yeah.
Right.
But we all have to process, or we do process whether we acknowledge it or not.
Right.
Right. That's therapy. We're bringing the unconscious conscious, right? Like we're all coping with the just inevitable anxieties of life, and people cope in different ways.
Yeah. And we do the best we can.
And you're doing the best you can right now.
Oh, but I can do better.
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
I'm sorry.
You accept help and you do what you got to do. Oh,
I'm sorry.
Don't hit me with that puppy face. Oh, man. Any final thoughts, last words for right now?
No, if you do want to support us or help us out,
just what can people
listen
do right
to
now?
this. Just listen to this and tell people about it. I honestly don't care about our numbers going up or we can finally get sponsors or that's not why we do this at all. If you have any questions that you want us to address, whether it's me and Kenzie directly or addressing with people we can bring on the podcast, let us know.
What would be helpful?
Yeah, I want to provide this to you guys. And side note, I will say that Meredith and her sister who live in the Palisades are both fine.
Okay.
And it was something where I talked to Meredith right when it was happening. And she's like, oh my God, forgive my language. She's like, what the fuck? My sister's place is gone. Are you fucking serious? Like, I don't even know. Like, what the hell? And she was just freaked out. And then she found out, oh no, her sister's place is fine. And her place is fine. Like miraculously, both their places made it.
Dang.
I think they're both still displaced. I don't think they're back in there yet. It might be a long road for them too. Just because your house is standing doesn't mean it's safe to be there.
Right. No.
Right?
No.
So
we're in flux right now.
Right. Meredith's fine. You're fine.
I'm fine.
Most importantly, Beckett's fine.
Yeah. Thank God he made it to 9 years old. He's fine.
That's right. That's right.
Great. You did it. You did it, bud.
Yeah. So drop us a line if you want on social media. We haven't entirely blocked Meta yet.
God, don't get me started. We can't talk about that.
But you can find us on Blue Sky.
Oh my God. Oh no. I've been calling it Blue Ski. Literally,
well,
for
that's
weeks
what
now.
I think that's what the URL says.
Yeah, it looks like Blue Ski.
Yeah.
And my partner was like, no, it's Blue Sky. Also, what's the difference? It's Twitter. Come on. It's going to devolve.
It's not Twitter.
It's going to devolve into the same
Twitter
crap.
is X and
okay,
X
whatever.
is Elon's.
It's all the same. It's all the same. I'm this close and I'm holding up my fingers, touching each other basically. This close to deleting all social media.
You're barely on social media anyway.
I know. And the last bits of it, I am.
You know what you are
done.
On though?
What?
This
Drugs.
podcast.
Sorry. Can't help ourselves.
We will most likely be back to you in some form.
Hopefully.
Next week.
We'll figure it out.
Maybe from the same location.
maybe a different one. Who knows?
Who knows?
Who knows? You got to embrace the constant change.
That's something my wife said in her wedding vows. If there's one thing you can count on in life,
it's change.
That's right.
Change is the only constant. And we are living it right now.
On that note,
see ya.